Today we're going to be talking about other types of banking accounts. In particular, we're going to review a savings account very quickly. And we're going to talk about money market accounts, which is a new type of account for us, and certificates of deposit. So let's get started. So a checking account, you remember this is your primary account for doing most of this, like a workhorse account. It's like where you're going to put your money and you're going to spend and pay bills and do most of your work in your checking account. Typically, checking accounts don't earn interest, and when they do, it's not a very meaningful amount. It's really small amounts of interest. Still better than none, but not much interest in a checking account. Savings account, this is where you're going to slowly build up your emergency savings to cover costs for things that happen unexpectedly, like, injuries, car accidents, those kind of things that pop up. And don't forget, pay yourself first. Also don't forget, you want to build this savings account up to be 3 to 6 months of income so that you can weather any kind of thing that happens that's bad for you. And don't forget to pay yourself first. So right when you get paid, instead of doing your bills first and then saving money afterwards, put some money into savings, $20, $50, $100 per paycheck, whatever you can afford. Put it into savings first and then manage your spending based on what you have left. That way you're not just blowing through all your money all the time and not saving up anything for a rainy day. All right. And this savings account typically pay a small amount of interest, but the interest is usually not very meaningful. It's usually less than 1%. Sometimes banks will make it seem like they have the best interest rates, but the best of really crummy interest rates is no big deal. This savings account is not a good way to build up interest. It is a good way to have money on hand to be able to quickly pay for emergencies. So the purpose of this account isn't to make you money. The purpose of the account is to help weather the storm when bad things happen in life. All right. Next, we're going to talk about, this is a new account. This is called a money market account. It's kind of a mix between a savings and a checking account. So like a checking account, you can write checks to pay bills. Oftentimes, the number of checks you write is limited in a money market account. Although that's happening less and less frequently. Sometimes you can also get a debit card with a money market account these days. That used to not be the case, but they're becoming more like checking accounts. They do tend to have a much higher minimum balance requirement. So instead of like a checking account, which there won't be a minimum requirement usually, a money market account, sometimes they'll say, hey, you have to maintain at least $5,000 or $2,000 in daily balances. Otherwise, you get charged a fee each month. And as a result of having these higher balances, they typically pay higher interest than checking or savings accounts. So their higher interest rates are good for you. You'll be earning money on your money that sits in that account. Interest, it's also called a dividend by some banks. This is money that the bank pays you to keep your money at their bank. So it's a way to incentivize you to use their bank and not another bank. And they pay you that money at the end of every month, and it builds up over time. Typically, these amounts are pretty small. What are money market accounts good for? Why would you want one? So one thing they're good for is emergency savings. So once you've built up several $1,000s, because remember, if you're making $60,000 a year, and you're taking home, you're taking home like $3,000 at that point probably. You want 3 to 6 months of savings. That's $9,000 to $18,000 in emergency savings. Once you've built up some money in that emergency savings account, you can actually open a money market account and let that be your emergency savings account. That way, if something happens, you can write a check directly from that emergency savings account to pay for like a car accident or something like that. And then you can start using your savings account to save up for things that are more fun, like maybe save up for a vacation account in that account while keeping your emergency in this other account, money market account, where it's going to earn more interest. You don't want $18,000 sitting in a savings account earning 1% interest when it could sit in a money market account earning 2, 3, 4% interest. Okay? And then the other way people use this as well is if they're going to do an expensive long-term purchase. So say you're doing a house renovation and you know it's going to take 6 months to a year to do, and you're going to spend $40,000 or $50,000 on it. You can open a money market account, put that money in there, and let it earn interest as you're going through the thing, and be able to write checks directly from that account. So you're not constantly mixing your renovation money with your daily money and getting confused on how much money you're spending on what. So it's another nice way to divide up things without having to open a whole new checking account, and you get to earn interest. Here are the money market rates for BECU of this year. You can see that you get better rates the more money you have in there, and they're in that 2 to 3% range if you're a member of the bank. All right, next we're going to talk about certificates of deposits. It just popped up. I didn't animate it. I apologize. A CD is a specialized account where you deposit money and that money just sits there. So you typically can't take money out or add more money as you go along. So it's not like a checking or savings account where you can change the balance. You basically, it's called purchasing a CD. You put money in that account and then you just leave it alone. At the end of that time period, 6 months, a year, 2 years, the bank returns your money to you plus the interest you earned during that time. Interest rates are typically higher than checking, savings, and money market accounts. So they can be in the, instead of the 2 to 3% range, it can be in the 4 or 5% range sometimes. There is, though, a penalty for withdrawing the money early. So if you have a 6-month CD and you need your money in 3 months and you need to pull that money out of there, typically what the bank will do is they'll return all of the money that you put in there, but none of the interest you would have earned. So you'll lose all that interest by breaking it out early. CDs, what are they good for? So they're really good to hide your money from yourself, which kind of sounds funny. But if you're like, I know I'm going to spend this money. I want to use this. Like I have saved up $1,000 to buy a car. I can't buy the car yet. I'm going to buy it in a year from now. So I'm going to buy a 1-year CD, put that money in there, so I don't get tempted to spend that $1,000 on something else in the interim. And you're earning a higher interest rate by doing that as well. So you'll make a little extra money by doing that. So a really great way to do that. And then also, if you aren't going to, you're not going to be using some money for a while, say you get an inheritance or a gift or something, and you're like, hey, I'm going to use this to save up for buying a house, but I'm not going to do that for another year from now. You could also put it in there. Or if you're just going to store the money in a way that's kind of away from your other accounts, you can also do that as well. So CDs are a smart way of earning some extra interest and protecting your money from yourself. All right. Let's do some calculations here real quick. So what I want to do is go through how to figure out how much money you will make if you actually open a CD. So in this one, we said, what if we deposit $750 in a 1-year CD? So I'm going to come down here and find the 1-year CD. And here is my interest rate. And what this is, so APR stands for annual percentage rate. That's the percent of the money that you're going to get extra in your account. In this case, I'm going to get an extra 4% from the bank on top of the money I put in there. So I need to find out what 4% of my $750. So they're the two numbers I'm using. First thing I need to remember is I need to convert this 4% back into a decimal. Because remember, the percent sign just tells us, hey, this thing was a decimal, but because it was ugly and scary, we turned it into a whole number by moving decimal place 2 places. So if I move this 2 places back to the left to make it a less nice looking number, I got to put a 0 here. And I know that, so my percentage rate, I'm going to write it right here, my APR is equal to 0.04 right there. So 0.04, that's the way we write 4%. So that's the real number for 4%. So let's use that. We're going to use this number and this number. If you can't remember what to do, whether you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, try them and see which ones give you a reasonable answer. 4% is a small amount of 100%, so it's not going to be big compared to my 750. The correct way of doing it is $750, and we're going to multiply by 0.04. Sometimes people don't think to multiply because typically when you multiply, you get a bigger number. But remember, when you're multiplying by a number that's less than 1, like this one is, a decimal number, you're going to get a smaller answer than what you started with. So our 750 is going to get smaller here. And the answer here when I do it is 30. And it's dollars. So here, this is the amount of interest I'm going to earn. So I'm going to say here in interest. Sorry, I'm still practicing how to write on this pad. So I got $30 in interest. So at the end of the 1 year, I'm going to get returned to me 750 plus 30 equals $780 returned. Awesome. So I hid that money for myself from a year, and in the end, I got 30 extra bucks. So everything's good. Now let's do this next one. What if we were to do this, instead of buying a 1-year CD up here, we're going to buy a 6-month CD, and we're going to put in $1,500. We want to know how much money we're going to get back in 6 months. So down here, I'm going to find my 6 months APR, which is right here. And remember, APR stands for the annual percentage rate. It's how much you're going to make in a year. Notice we're only going 6 months, so it's going to add a little wrinkle into it. Okay, so I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to take my interest rate. I'm going to move the decimal place 2 places over, back to a decimal. So I'm going to say, now I'm going to say $1,500. And I'm going to multiply that by the interest rate as a decimal, which in this case is 0.0425. And I'm going to get, I get an answer of 63.75. Now I have to be careful, so I'm going to put a $ there. 63.75 in a year. But this is only a 6-month CD, so I'm not going to earn a full year of interest. I'm going to earn half of this. So I'm going to take this and divide it by 2. And so that's going to be divided by 2. That's going to give me 31.88. That's going to be 31.88 in 6 months. So now I need to figure out how much I'm going to totally get. So I'm going to get all of my money back, which is the $1,500, plus the $31.88. So I'm going to get back $1,531.88 returned to me. Awesome. So we're not making huge amounts of money, but we're making some money, like 31 bucks. That's a good thing. And you kept your money kind of locked away so you didn't accidentally spend it on something else. All right, let's do this. Try this last one and then pause the video and see if you get the right answer. All right, you're back. Let's do it. So I'm going to find my 8th-month CD. It's down to 3%. This is interesting. When you see the percentage rates going down over long-term stuff, what that means is that Kitsap Credit Union thinks that they're going to have a harder time making money in the future, so they're not going to offer you as much interest for longer-term stuff. They're not sure about the future, so they're hedging their bets, which is interesting. Typically, these would be, the longer it is, they'll be higher. So if they see that, hey, in the future, we think things are going to be really bright, they'll actually offer higher interest in the future for that reason. Okay, so $7,500. So we've taken a big chunk of money. And I'm going to come down here and find my interest rate for a 18-month CD is 3%. So that's going to be 0.03. And I'm going to find that to be 7,500 times 0.03. Yep, that feels right. $225. Now that's for 1 year. But this is 18 months. This is a year and a half. So I need to figure out how much another, so that's, I get 225 plus half a year more of that. So I'm going to come over here and just do some math. So 225 for a year divided by 2, that'll tell me what half of that is. And it looks like it's going to be 112.5. And I should actually probably use pennies over here. I've skipped using the pennies. I'm going to leave the pennies off just to make life easier. So let's call this 113. And that's for 6 months. Ooh, that's some bad writing. So I get 225 for the first year, another 113 for the next 6 months. So now I just got to add it all together. I get my original money back. I get my $7,500 back, plus the 225 I earned for the whole year, plus The 113 I earned for the 6 months. That's a total of 18 months now. And I just need to do I'm going to get back about $7,839. $7,839. So all of a sudden, over those 18 months, I'm getting back a good chunk of money more than what I put in. That is a CD. Thank you, everybody. Oh, we got one more slide. Hang in there with me. I apologize. We're not quite done yet. One more. Let me turn off this pen tool. All right, now the question is, why would a bank pay you interest? So why are they giving you money to have money in their account? Well, the reality is a bank uses portions of the money they have in everyone's accounts to invest and make money on, to write loans for other people, to let people borrow money. They're letting people borrow basically your money in order to make their profits. They use that profit to pay their salaries, their rent for their banks, all the things they have to pay for. And to encourage more customers to deposit their money in their bank so that the bank has more money to do their stuff with, they offer interest payments. Note that the bank will always pay less interest on an account than what they're charging on a loan. So if you're getting 2% in your money market account, they're charging 5 or 6% on loans typically. Okay? And the more stable the account balance, the more interest the bank can offer. So for example, checking accounts usually have no interest or very low interest. That's because that account goes up and down constantly as you're getting paid and paying bills. So the bank can't use very much of that money to be able to write loans and do things with, because they have to always have that money ready to be giving out for you. But a more stable thing like a CD, that they know they're going to have that money for 6 months or a year or 2 years. Now they can start using large portions of that to do their work with. So that's why some accounts get more interest than others. Last slide. So here's the summary. Fill out this table. See if you can fill out all the things in this table, and then we'll pop back and I'll show you the answers. Yeah, hit pause and then come back and check out the answers. All right, you're back. So how can you access your money? For a checking account, lots of ways. Checks, ATM, debit cards, apps, all kinds of ways to get your money out. Savings, fewer than checking. So ATM transfer to checking. Money market account are similar to checking accounts, but usually they're more limited in terms of the number of transactions you can do. And a CD, your money is locked up, right? So checking accounts most accessible. Savings, less accessible. Money market, a little more than savings, but less than checking usually. And CD, much less accessible. So in terms of the interest banks are paying, they're going to see these accounts where you're not able to pull your money out as a more stable account. They're going to offer more interest for that because they can use that money more predictably to make their stuff. All right, what's the starting minimum balance? So usually a checking account's really small. They don't usually require you to have money in your checking account. So sometimes people will pay their account down to like under $100 and then get paid and then spend it down again. So they're really hard for the bank to use that money to make investments in. Savings, and also really small. People tend to leave more money in savings so the bank can count on that money to sort of use some of that money to start making some investments in. So that's why you still have small interest there. Money market, typically they require thousands of dollars before you have to pay a fee or a penalty for having it, so they can count on that money more. And certificates of deposit require lots of money to start out, like hundreds of dollars to open a CD. How much interest? So checking account, little to none. Slightly more than checking because savings, people tend to leave their money in there a little bit more than checking accounts. And the money market, typically more than savings account, and that's because they have that large minimum that you have to have in there, so they can count on that money to make money with. And then this last one, typically more than money market accounts, because now they've kind of locked your money up and they can be more predictably use that money. So hopefully that makes sense about those accounts. Have a great one. Good job, everybody.